Welcome to Patriots Corner with Dr. Hill Law, your source for unfiltered conservative analysis. We're here to dissect this week's biggest stories in politics, breaking news, government, and the economy, all from a grounded conservative perspective. No spin, just straight talk about what matters to you. We will be diving into the issues shaping our nation, holding our leaders accountable, and discussing solutions that uphold our core American values. Alrighty. And just for a couple disclaimers, I want to make it clear I am not an attorney. My doctorate is in law and public policy, although my doctoral studies have provided me with a comprehensive understanding of landmark Supreme Court cases and the intricacies of criminal law. My principal areas of expertise lie in distinct yet interconnected fields. These specialized domains encompass construction law, the complexities of zoning regulation and their practical applications, the multifaceted aspects of urban development, the formulation and analysis of public policy, the planning and implementation of transportation infrastructure, and the critical challenges and solutions surrounding affordable housing initiatives and legislation. Now, thanks for tuning in to Patriots Corner. I haven't set the exact days up yet, but I'm going to start trying to do it probably around 9 o'clock, 8, 9 o'clock during the week Central Time on Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook, along with TikTok. One other final disclaimer before I start the show. Please be aware that during my live broadcast, any statements I make pertaining to financial investments or legal analysis should be understood strictly as an expression of my own personal opinion. These statements are not and should not be interpreted as formal legal counsel or professional investment advice. It is crucial to conduct your own thorough research and consult with local qualified professionals before making any financial or legal decisions. My insights are based on my individual perspective and understanding at the time of the broadcast and may not be suitable for everyone's specific circumstances. Now to go ahead and get started with our first segment, which is going to be over the federal court overreach. In recent days have brought another torrent of political news marked by numerous instances of where many perceive as judicial overreach. These actions are often attributed to judges with a progressive or leftist ideology who harbor animosity towards President Trump. These judges are overstepping their constitutional boundaries, attempting to legislate from the bench rather than interpret existing laws. They are encroaching upon the powers explicitly granted to the president and the executive branch under Article 2 of the United States Constitution and by acts of Congress, and violating Article 3 judicial laws. A prominent example of this occurred on Thursday when a judge for the U.S. Trade Court issued a nationwide injunction blocking most of President Trump's tariffs. This injunction challenged the authority of President Trump to implement tariffs, a tool he has employed to pressure foreign nations into negotiating new trade agreements. The administration's rationale for these tariffs is to create trade deals that are more advantageous to American businesses, aiming to foster economic growth and to protect domestic industries. However, the judge's ruling effectively halted this strategy, asserting that President Trump lacked the inherent power to impose such tariffs. This decision ignited a debate about the separation of powers and the appropriate role of the judiciary in matters of trade and of foreign policy. Those who applauded the injunction argued that it served as a necessary check on presidential power, preventing potential economic harm and upholding the principles of constitutional governance. This legal battle underscores the ongoing tensions between the judicial and executive branches regarding the scope of their respective authorities, particularly in areas with significant economic and international implications. Later that same day, a significant development occurred in the legal proceedings surrounding President Trump's administration's trade policies. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit Court issued a ruling granting the administration's request for an immediate administrative stay. This decision effectively put a temporary halt to the judge's permanent injunctions that had been previously issued by the Court of the International Trade Court earlier that day in the particular cases. The appellate court's action provided the temporary reprieve for the Trump administration in its ongoing legal battles. All right, I messed up something there by accident. So I gotta get back to where I was there on my content. Sorry about that. But yeah, so the appellate court's action provided temporary reprieve for the Trump administration and its ongoing legal battles concerning international trade matters. Yeah, I just got this new teleprompter and actually scrolled it down. The central argument presented before the U.S. Trade Court revolves around the fundamental question of constitutional authority concerning international commerce. The contention is that the U.S. Constitution explicitly grants Congress the sole power to regulate trade with foreign nations, a power that, according to this argument, is not superseded by the president's emergency powers aimed at protecting the American economy. This assertion underscores a crucial separation of powers principle embedded within the U.S. government framework. However, the analysis suggests a likely victory for the Trump administration in this legal challenge, primarily based on the provisions outlined in the Trade Act of 1974, specifically Section 301 of this act, emerges as a key point of contention in this case. This section empowers the United States Trade Representative, USTR, acting under the explicit direction of the President of the United States to impose tariffs or implement other trade restrictions, non-trade barriers, tariff trade barriers on countries identified as engaging in unfair trade practices that demonstrably harm U.S. commerce. This legislative provision appears to grant the executive branch significant authority in addressing perceived imbalances and inequities in international trade. The argument further poised that establishing the culpability of nations like China, India, and potentially numerous others in unfair trade practices should not present an insurmountable hurdle. The existence of various trade disputes, accusations of intellectual property theft, currency manipulation, and market access barriers often levied against these countries could provide substantial evidence to support President Trump's administration's claims. Given the high stakes and the complex interplay between constitutional principles and statutory law, the analysis anticipates the potential for this case to ultimately reach the Supreme Court. The nation's highest judicial body would then be tasked with definitively interpreting the scope of Congress's authority of foreign commerce in relation to the president's power to act in defense of the national economy, particularly within the framework established by the Trade Act of 1974. Now, despite the potential for Supreme Court involvement, the prevailing belief is that the final decision will likely align with the Trump administration's position, thereby affirming the president's authority through the USTR and the Trade Act to impose tariffs and other trade restrictions in response to unfair international trade practices, which the outcome would have significant implications for the future of U.S. trade policy and its relationships with key global trading partners. The Supreme Court recently also issued a significant ruling that curtails the authority of federal courts to impose nationwide injunctions as such for infrastructure projects facing environmental challenges. This decision represents a noteworthy development in the ongoing balance of power between the judicial and executive branches. Simultaneously, now we're awaiting another potentially landmark Supreme Court decision and waiting for this decision to come. If the Supreme Court is to rule in favor of President Trump, this forthcoming ruling has the potential to reshape the political environment fundamentally and establish a historical precedent by limiting the ability of federal judges to issue nationwide injunctions against executive branch policies while these policies undergo judicial review. Such a ruling could significantly alter the process by which executive branch policies are implemented and challenged, potentially leading to more localized and less sweeping judicial interventions in the execution of federal initiatives. The implications of this pending decision are far reaching, with the potential to redefine the scope of judicial oversight of executive actions and the manner in which policy disputes are resolved. I mean, this can be a big, huge win for President Trump. Now, for my second section, I'm going to take a little break. Still no live chats. Only got one person in each. Shows one person in locals, one person in Rumble. Doesn't show anybody in Facebook or YouTube. I was trying to see if I could even see my YouTube, my live on YouTube, where I could even watch it. There it is. All right. Make sure that's not on private. Nope, it's on public. Alrighty. Making sure everything's marked public. Alrighty. So for segment 2, I was wanting to talk about the Biden administration scandal that's going on with the auto pen and everything. And so assertions have been made by some leftists claiming that President Biden's policies have never faced constitutional challenges or nationwide injunctions, revealing a clear lapse in their memory because they have plenty of times. And the reality is, numerous of his executive orders and memorandums had in the under Biden administration had indeed were subject to significant legal scrutiny and have resulted in federal judges issuing nationwide injunctions. Determining a precise figure of such instances is difficult due to the ongoing nature of many legal cases, which most of those have been dropped now because of President Trump reverts the executive orders. Now, obviously, most of them were conservative organizations where they had mounted numerous legal challenges against Biden administration policies. The challenges often were centering on arguments of executive overreach, allegations of violation of the Administrative Procedure Act, and contentions that the federal government had infringed upon the rights and powers reserved to the states. Key areas where these legal battles have unfolded include President Biden's executive actions and policy directives concerning voting rights, immigration enforcement policy, environmental regulations aimed at addressing climate change, and mandates implemented in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Each of these areas have seen legal challenges question the previous administration's authority to the constitutionality of its actions. Now, one of the particular prominent examples of the Biden administration facing the legal challenges and the ultimate defeat by the Supreme Court was the case of Biden v. Nebraska, where the Supreme Court of the United States ultimately struck down President Biden's ambitious plan to forgive a substantial amount of outstanding student federal loan debt. Even with that ruling, Biden still decided to go in and proceed to try to defy the Supreme Court and keep on pushing for student loan forgiveness. Now, he did try to do that, and he also tried to do it through other ways, through the new income redriven payment plans, the SAVE plan, and other policy initiatives. The administration continued its efforts to provide student loan debt relief, demonstrably persistent, committing, even though judicial rejection had came into place. So when people say, oh, President Trump has to follow the Supreme Court, he's not the first president to not follow the Supreme Court in every one. Now, the burgeoning concerns surrounding President Biden's cognitive state post-presidency has raised critical questions about the true nature of his administration's final years. The emerging narrative suggests a potentially far-reaching scandal wherein key decisions in the very direction of the nation may have been orchestrated by unelected staff members, effectively sidelining the elected president. And the question is, why didn't they use the 25th Amendment? And now, as reports are surfacing that indicate a lack of awareness on Biden's part regarding numerous significant executive actions, particularly within the realm of climate change, these alleged incidents have spurred demands for thorough investigations to ascertain the full extent of the situation. Among the specific actions highlighted from the Power of the Future, the Arctic drilling ban, achieving net zero emissions by 2050, the establishment of the clean energy AI centers, and drilling the offshore drilling ban upon multiple others. Now, the implications of these revelations are profoundly alarming. Even without the resources of me being able to do FOIA requests or establish connection with the political arenas, if this, even a small portion of the current allegations hold true, we are facing a political scandal of unparalleled proportions in American history. I mean, worse than Watergate. And the unsettling prospect that the United States functioning for nearly 4 years without a fully aware and actively guiding president raises serious concerns about our political integrity. Moreover, the idea that unelected bureaucrats were steering the ship calls into question the very foundation of accountability the democratic process and representative government itself calls for. And the one problem will be is because of executive authority and all of that, is how much of this will we actually learn due to the protections of the being the president stuff, is how much will we actually learn, because a lot of them will be able to claim executive privilege. Should this situation substantiated, it would be lay bare the links to which particular okay, sorry, I messed with my thing there, but which bear with the links to which a particular ideology might go to secure and sustain power. There is a troubling suggestion that the progressive left, in their relentless pursuit to reshape America into a new world order, may have adopted extreme measures to ensure their agenda's continuity, even at the expenditure of traditional leadership. This premature such action should veer the threat of the integrity of the American governance and generate significant anxiety regarding our nation's future path. I mean, this scenario also sheds light on the intense animosity directed towards President Trump. Unlike many career politicians who often depended on substantial campaign donations and the promise of lucrative opportunities following their service, Trump's significant personal wealth grants him a rare degree of autonomy. I'm somewhere my thing messed a lot, or somehow I deleted a section of my thing because it was supposed to go to another part. It feels like I deleted a section of my paper or my thing, but I guess I'll continue from where I was. All right. And then pretty much talking about they like to go after Trump, but and the way you have to pay to get all that stuff when it comes to there we go. This is where yeah, um I did accidentally jump ahead of myself, but yeah, but and it's funny, and when it comes to the as far as the financial independence that has impact is when they talk about Trump and stuff and why the government hates him. The reason why is because many career politicians often depend on substantial campaign donations and the promise of lucrative opportunities following their service. Trump's significant personal wealth grants him a rare degree of autonomy from that. This financial independence empowers him to champion his political agenda and keep his campaign promises without the chains or obligations that typically bind politicians to powerful financial backers. The influence the lobbyists and major corporations wield over the American government is nothing short of staggering. Now, in a and what's crazy is even in a podcast interview, Matt Gaetz talked about how when he was elected and looking to be appointed to a committee position, he was told the seat would cost him a $75,000 donation to the party. So he either had to pay for it out of his own pocket or raise it from the lobbyist representing the companies regulated by that committee. I mean, it's ridiculous. And this is just a stark illustration of how government representatives' actions can be influenced by lobbyists and major corporations, regardless of how much they believe they can make a difference. Unless they want to be pushed out of office and have trouble finding work in an industry or any industry, really. And yeah, see, I somehow deleted half of my segment of my second segment out of there. But it's look, I got two people on YouTube. Thanks. If y'all want to leave something in the chat, let me know. I'm trying to start getting on here more. If you're not following already, please follow. Also, check me out on TikTok. I've got a little banner run across the bottom that's got all of my stuff. But in the sec break my segment three, I was going to do the breaking news alert. Sorry, somehow half of my second, a couple of things, sections of my second segment disappeared. I must accidentally delete them or something. But President Trump had announced the investment in U.S. steel industry in a powerful address delivered tonight at a U.S. steel plant in Pennsylvania. President Donald Trump unveiled a groundbreaking initiative poised to revitalize American manufacturing and secure the livelihoods of countless steelworkers. He announced that a historic $14 billion business investment, marking the largest infusion of capital into both the state of Pennsylvania and the entire United States steel industry in history, which was that's going to bring on beyond what we can even think of as far as jobs. And I mean, it comes with significant. It also did secure significant guarantees for American workers. And pathetically, he stated that as part of this agreement, there will be no outsourcing of jobs and no job cuts within the U.S. steel industry for a guaranteed period of 10 years. There's a commitment to provide a crucial layer of scrutiny and stability, security and stability for the dedicated men and women who form the backbone of this vital sector. Furthermore, in a move to directly aimed at rewarding the hard work and dedication of these employees, President Trump announced a $5,000 bonus for every U.S. steel employee that will be eventually paid, which will help give immediate recognition for their contribution and underscore the administration's commitment to supporting American labor. Building on his administration's America First trade policy, President Trump also declared an additional 50% tariff on all foreign steel imports. This decisive action is intended to create a level playing field for domestic producers, incentivize American companies to prioritize the purchase of American made steel, and further bolster the resurgence of the national steel industry. The multifaceted announcement represents a significant victory for American manufacturing and Pennsylvania's economy and the thousands of families supported by the U.S. steel industry and jobs that it's suspected to create, not including it's a strategic triumph for the American industry. The merger is a monumental game changer, positioning U.S. Steel to become an even more formidable force in the global market. By joining forces with Nippon Steel, U.S. Steel is poised for unprecedented growth and will emerge bigger and stronger than ever before. What does this mean for America? It means massive infusions of capital and cutting edge technologies will be injected into our domestic steel industry. Over the next 4 years, we anticipate thousands of high quality jobs will be created across the United States, revitalizing communities and strengthening our manufacturing backbone. This is a clear demonstration of how strategic partnerships can fuel American prosperity and secure our industrial future. Getting word tongue tied there. This development reaffirms our nation's commitment to its core industries and that the skilled workers who power them. It ensures that a critical component of our infrastructure and national security remains firmly rooted on American soil. The future of U.S. Steel, bolstered by this powerful alliance, is brighter than ever, promising sustained growth, innovation, and job creation for years to come. For my fourth section, I got two more sections left. I'm going to grab a drink real quick. I was going to go for the left's attack on Trump, where it's become apparent that concerns regarding President Biden's cognitive abilities have gained traction in response to a seemingly strategic move has emerged from certain quarters to deflect these concerns by initiating attacks on President Trump, suggesting that he too is exhibiting early indicators of dementia, which is kind of crazy. It's disingenuous considering that stark contrast in their public engagement. President Trump routinely conducts numerous interviews throughout the day, maintaining a level of accessibility and transparency which the press that is arguably unprecedented. This constant interaction, while intended to foster openness, ironically also provides his detractors with a vast amount of material that they can be selectively edited and manipulated. Because why care about the truth? Because the current media landscape, they prioritize sensationalism and gotcha moments by isolating brief snippets of President Trump's extensive remarks and stripping them of their original context. These clips can be weaponized to create a false narrative and misrepresent his statements to sway public opinion among certain segments. It is a tactic that exploits the ease with which information can be disseminated and consumed in the digital age, often at the expense of factual accuracy and comprehensive understanding. Looking back at President Trump's first term in office, a notable period of relative global stability prevailed. However, the landscape dramatically shifted following President Biden's ascension to the presidency. The world has since witnessed a surge in instability across various fronts. Domestically, the United States has grappled with a significant crisis at its southern border, coupled with alarmingly high levels of inflation, higher than in over 20 years, impacting the financial well-being of countless Americans. Furthermore, the nation has experienced an unprecedented surge in government spending, leading to a staggering increase of $8.4 trillion in national debt, accompanied by a substantial $2 trillion deficit. But yet the left sits there and says, oh, he's raising the debt. He's raising debt. He's lowering taxes. He's raising the debt. Really? And your president raised it $8.4 trillion? Yeah, okay, whatever. Nobody believes that. And ironically, it is the political left that has voiced strong criticism regarding the increase in national debt stemming from initiatives like the Big Beautiful Bill, while simultaneously saying we should be raising taxes, not lowering them. Which this is not the sheer magnitude of the nation's fiscal challenges cannot be taken over by taxing us out of the debt. Our debt stands at an astronomical 36 trillion, and when you account for all the liabilities, the figure swells to over 156 trillion. So it's simply unrealistic to believe that raising taxes alone can effectively address such a colossal financial burden. A more comprehensive and fiscally responsible approach is undoubtedly required to navigate the unprecedented economic realities, but the only problem is, in order for that to happen, the majority of the stuff that would need to be done requires a supermajority, which means it requires Democratic votes. But the Democrats don't want to cut a budget. They want to sit there and complain that, the budget's too high. But when it comes down to actually cutting the budget, they'll gladly cut national security and let China take over or let Russia take over, but they're not going to, they won't dare touch anything else. It's hilarious. Are we trying to go back to pre-World War I or pre-World War II levels where we literally almost got destroyed because we weren't ready? Because we would downsized our Navy and our military so small, when we know that that's the one thing we need is protection, especially in today's day and age with technology, hypersonic missiles, and all that stuff. In the new space race that started, it's ridiculous that they would think that. It's insane. Now, for my final segment, I was going to go on a little bit more of the left's hypocrisy, is that they're fundamentally motivated by the acquisition and maintenance of power and control. Their objective is achieved in part by cultivating a victim mentality among their constituents by convincing individuals that they are inherently disadvantaged and incapable of success without governmental intervention. Or they make them feel that they are the oppressors. It's one or the other. They're either being oppressed or the oppressors, which then turns around and fosters dependence on state support or government support. However, paradoxically hinders the very success it purports to enable. A mindset that perceives systematic obstruction and personal victimization discourages the risk taking and perseverance necessary for upward mobility and personal achievement. Consequently, individuals who believe themselves to be victims trapped within a rigid system are less likely to pursue opportunities and overcome challenges, ultimately perpetuating a cycle of reliance rather than fostering the independence and self sufficiency they claim to purport. It's the opposite. While this might be a controversial stance for some of the Republicans, and you would think this would be something that most Democrats would support, it would also affect the control of their power because they would actually have to listen to their constituents. But it is undeniable that significant reforms are necessary regarding the laws and constitutional interpretation surrounding lobbying and campaign finance law in our political system. The argument that money constitutes a form of speech and the ability to lobby elected officials is a fundamental aspect of petitioning the government for redress or legislative change holds a certain, obviously very historical weight. But at the inception of our nation, the accessibility to the representatives was far more equitable. Ordinary citizens possessed a realistic opportunity to meet with their congressional members or even meet with the president to advocate for specific legislative actions they believed in or change. But today, that's impossible. I mean, it's there. I mean, with how much the landscape of political influence has drastically changed, reality today is that access to our elected officials is heavily skewed towards those with substantial financial resources. Without the capacity to contribute tens of thousands of dollars, the prospect of even a brief phone call with a representative, let alone a meaningful face to face meeting, becomes increasingly remote. Consequently, the primary entities wielding influence through lobbying efforts are overwhelmingly groups backed by multi billion dollar corporations. This stark disparity undermines the very principles of representative democracy when only the wealthiest organizations possess the means to effectively communicate their interests and shape legislation. The voices and concerns of average citizens risk being marginalized or entirely ignored. The current system creates an uneven playing field where the influence of the wealthy and well connected far outweighs the collective will of the people. Therefore, comprehensive reforms to lobbying regulations and campaign finance laws are notably not merely advisable, but a critical imperative to restore a more equitable and truly representative government. These reforms must aim to level the playing field, ensuring that access to our elected officials and the ability to influence policy are not solely determined by financial capacity. And where I get at this with is if in today's world, if you us as an individual, we're limited to $3,000 per person per candidate, like we have 3,000 to donate. But a corporation or a business can donate unlimited amounts as long as it's not directly to the candidates, to a private organization that supports the candidate. But yet the candidate can spend all the money they want, but we can't. So if a candidate who has no money, he can't try to get small individual people to donate more than 3,000 to him so he can actually try to play the big boys. So even if you're not a very good fundraiser, if you've got all your own money, you can get your campaign won. Obviously, it's better if they're paying for their own campaign because then we know that they're actually not beholden to any major corporation or anything like that, like we have with Trump. But the downside is that no little guy can actually run for presidency unless he becomes beholden to a major corporation because he needs the money or she needs their money to get elected. And then that company, when they start trying to push or pass legislation that will necessarily not benefit that company or benefit the group of people that lobby and the lobbyist supports or whatever, they're going to come to that person and say, you're not passing that because if you don't, we will not support you your next election. We will not back you. We'll not donate for you. Also, if you want that cushy job we were going to give you when you're done, it's gone. You want those book deals and those speaking deals that makes you 500,000 a speaking arrangement and get 5 or 6 of those a year? That's gone. You will never work another day in Washington. You'll never be supported by the political establishment. You will be as broke once you leave office as you were when you came into office. And that's how they hold control of the government. That's how the top 1%. And then the funny thing is people argue that, oh, it's the right wants to cut taxes and they're giving all these tax breaks to the rich. Well, the funny thing is the one thing that Republicans try to get rid of is what's called the estate tax. All right. And yes, you have to be kind of rich for that to even affect you, but you'll see what I'm getting to in a second. The estate tax was actually registered by Democrats claiming that they wanted to do it to protect the poor, when in reality it was total opposite. Okay. You're a small family farmer, right? You own a farm out in Iowa or somewhere. You've got 1,000 acres of land. Let's say that land is now worth 10, 20 million. All right. And then you've got another 2, 3 million in tractor equipment and everything like that. But half of it's financed. Then you've got to pay all of your farm hands and everything like that. And then by the time you sell all your stuff, if you even make money that year, you might clear $100,000, $200,000. Now, if you were not financially sound or smart enough to incorporate or start an LLC, S corp, whatever, and then to set up a trust to put that company in, so your kids can be receivers of that trust and not actually receive the money directly. When you pass away or die, guess what? The government's going to come and say, "Hey, you owe us 30% of the total assets of your parents' wealth, not their cash wealth, asset wealth." Okay, they might say, let's say they have 1-2 million in cash, but you've got 20 million worth of total assets. You think your kids are going to come up with 30% of 20 million and they've got less than a million? They can't afford the payments on a loan for that. So what are they forced to do? That generational wealth you had built for them, to pass on to their kids and their kids, is now got to be sold to some major corporation. So what do you have? They get this big money when they buy it, but then they're not big business people, or most of the time not highly intelligent investors and stuff. So they get this couple million because they sell the company, no matter near what they would have made if they'd kept the company and not owed all those taxes and actually been able to keep the majority of the sell. That money's gone before they pass away, and then there's nothing to leave to their kids. All of a sudden, that generational wealth is gone. All right, that's where this thing comes in, is that the left tries to pretend like they want to help the poor, but they don't. They want to help the rich, and they want you to be dependent on them for everything. They want power and money. That's all they care about. They don't care about the people. They don't care about individuality. They claim to say they do, but really they're just a bunch of racists trying to segregate everybody by individual groups, because they don't know the difference between a man and a woman. They can't claim what they wonder why they lost the so-called dude's vote, because they can't even define what a dude is. If they can't even define what a dude is, how they expect to get a dude to vote for him? Then this fat liberal saying, "Oh, most of the young guy or so-called conservative Republican guys, they support gay marriage. They're for transgender rights. They're for choice." No, I've no frat. I haven't seen very many dudes type frats that have got a pride flag hanging in there and a support and free choice. No. I mean, most of them at that age, they don't care. It doesn't mean they support it. They just don't really have an opinion on it, because they care more about the economy. They care more about job security, border security, national security. They care less about the other stuff. But when you put them into this box, then yeah. And that's what the left loves to do. They want to divide everybody by race or gender ideology, when, I'm sorry, but there is a man and a woman. It's biological. It's funny. Okay, whenever we say that, oh, there's not climate change, or it's not global warming, or it's not global cooling, because originally it was cooling, then they said it was warm. They said it was warming, but then it started cooling, so they changed it to climate change. They said we were science deniers. But when y'all claim, oh, there's more than two genders, there's 34, y'all aren't science deniers because y'all are trying to say that gender is different from biological sex when in reality, you maybe had one or two people in the before around the 1960s that started claiming that gender was separate from biology. Before that, biological sex and gender were the same. But it wasn't actually until 2013, after we had legalized gay marriage, that they changed the definition of gender disorder to gender dysphoria, declassified it as a mental disorder, and then all of a sudden started considering gender dysphoria as a separated definition from biological sex. Before that, they had actually had studies going on that were proving that there was some, they were getting to find out that most lesbian women who wanted to become men were subjected to too much testosterone in utero. Men who were more likely to say that they felt like they were a woman were exposed to too much estrogen in utero. Now there was only small. It wasn't enough to really prove whether there was any truth to this or not. But the problem was, is as soon as they changed it from gender disorder to gender dysphoria, that shut it down. Now, while I didn't really care, I wasn't. My thing is, I don't think marriage should be determined by the government, anyways. It should be up to the churches whether they want to get married or not. And then if some church wants to decide that some gay people can get married and be just as miserable and whatever as straight people, okay. But you can't force a church to. You can't sit there and try to force everybody else to change their lifestyle to meet yours. That's the problem. That's where the obscurity comes in, from the objectivity and everything that comes into that people are pushing back, is because you want 80% of the population to change for 20% of the population. You want to sit there and act like every single group of people know a gay person or a transgender person when they don't. So you want to put a gay person and a lesbian and a transgender person in every freaking movie or every freaking commercial, like that's the way life is, when it's not. Well, gay people are less than 20% of the population. Transgenders are less than like 10 or 5% of the population. So if they're not happy with who they are, then obviously there's something that makes them not happy with that. I don't care. I don't make people try to change for me. I am who I am. If they don't like it, screw them. And that's why they should never have reclassified it. But I said this a long time ago, as soon as we legalized gay marriage, we were opening Pandora's box. And it wouldn't be too long before transgender people were going to be claiming that they were multiple genders, and then there were more than two genders. And then also I said it wouldn't be too long before pedophiles start claiming that, oh, that's just who they are. That they don't have a mental illness. That's just who they are. And that's who they identify as. That's the problem with this ideology of we identify as a freaking bunny or identify as a kitty cat. No, you can't be a fucking cat and you can't be a bunny. Now, if you're a 3-year-old and you say, I'm a kitty cat or I'm a doggy, okay, that's a 3-year-old child. They're supposed to have imaginations. They're supposed to pretend. They're supposed to play around. They're supposed to do all that. But that also doesn't mean because some 3 or 4-year-old decides he idolizes his mommy and wants to wear some his mom's clothes and stuff, that all of a sudden when he turns 4 or 5, you start telling him, oh, hey, you can be a girl or a boy. Okay, they don't even understand what you're saying at that age. Their brain is not developed enough to understand. You tell them that, they're going to be like, oh, okay, well then I'll just be this. I feel better. I want to be this. Doesn't mean that's who they truly are. Quit trying to push this crap on kids at 4 and 5 years old. I mean, if they can't decide to get a tattoo before the age of 18, how can they decide to mutilate themselves before the age of 18? How can they decide if they believe there's somebody different before the age of 18? Explain that to me. We want to let them, it makes no sense. So, would like to, obviously, I would say we welcome questions and debate on topics covered, but since there's I don't see any live chats or anybody messaging me, so I don't think there's anybody as far. But thank you for watching this episode of Patriots Corner. If you'd like to join next time, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for listening with Patriots Corner Live with Dr. Hill. And remember to like, follow, and subscribe for exclusive content. Also, twice a week, I stream here on Rumble and YouTube, where I discuss subjects that are not permitted on TikTok. Also, please, if you're subscribing through Rumble, go to my locals. Also, right now, I do not have enough followers on YouTube to actually get subscribers yet. So please follow. And then if you would like to subscribe for more personalized content, look to my Rumble channel and my local channel. But thank you and have a good night.